I mean, they dropped Robert Mugabe like a hot potato, and they all stormed towards Nelson Mandela. And I think myself that he was not able to handle that. And then he's married a younger woman and has to try to prove to her that he's macho. But I think what snapped him was the fact that he had been the top dog. I mean, and really, quite rightly, was the premier leader in Africa until...
The following conversation with Archbishop Desmond Tutu was recorded in April of 2008 at the World Affairs Council of Northern California.
You know, as you were coming here, I was getting the news. As you were driving up here, I was getting the news. And we see that massive violence has now broken out in Zimbabwe. And you know that country well. Tell us what you think the prospects are, if there are ways to avert full-scale massive violence throughout.
Yes. You feel so drained, really, because in a way you are seeing things working out as most people feared they might. A week ago, I was interviewed by BBC, and I said it might be that the world has to provide a peacekeeping force. It's one of those sad things, I mean, because Zimbabwe was such a wonderful country in many, many ways. Really a showpiece country, and Robert Mugabe was somebody we held in very high regard, and he was our star turn. It does seem as if, I mean, unless either the African Union or SADC and the United Nations perhaps step in, we are going to see an eruption of violence that in some ways was preventable. I think many of us ask what in fact happened. I mean, what snapped? And you get to realize just how important women are. because I think Robert Mugabe's first wife, she must have been, she was clearly a very, very important influence on him, and as it were, reined him in, as most of us are. And then he's married a younger woman, and has to try to prove to her that he's macho. But I think what snapped him was the fact that he had been the top dog. I mean, and really, quite rightly, was the premier leader in Africa until Nelson Mandela came. And the media are not subtle. I mean, they dropped Robert Mugabe like a hot potato, and they all stormed towards Nelson Mandela. And I think myself that he was not able to handle that. Mm-hmm. Very few of us can. I mean, you can't one day be first fiddle and then the next be fourth fiddle and be able to deal with that with equanimity.
Even if Robert Mugabe himself would want to step down, what about those around him? Wouldn't they be fearful for their own deeds?
I think, I mean, that they are saying, in some ways, you have a kind of Samson syndrome. You know, if he goes down, all of us who supported him are inevitably also going to go down, and we are going to hold him up as long as possible for our own survival's sake. You see, why is it that we are willing to accept the prospect of immense suffering for a lot of people just in order for a few to survive? I mean, even now, Robert Mugabe could still, in fact, actually redeem himself by saying what is obvious. I mean, he must have lost the elections. I mean, he can't, if he had won, they would have been crowing. Clearly, the results are not what they had expected. And one is just saddened that the Electoral Commission did not have the guts to say, we're an Electoral Commission, we've got the results, we've got to publish the results. And if he had wanted to salvage something of his legacy, which has been an important legacy, stepping down with dignity, saying, well, I've lost and I accept the results. And then, it's so stark, the contrast between what has happened in next door Botswana, because the president, Mugabe, has stepped down and has been succeeded, and it's happened so smoothly that most people don't even know that it has taken place. Oh dear, yes. I'm so glad I'm not God. I mean,
No, part of the reason we know that Robert Mugabe didn't win is that both sides had agreed to let the polling places post the results.
yes.
Why that transparency? Has it become harder and harder for an autocrat to keep information from their publics?
I suppose so. And, I mean, it may have been that he still did believe that he had compromised so many people by the gifts that they got, the farms and so on, that and saying to so many, I mean, those veterans, you are going to get land that belonged to white people, that he still probably just might have thought, yeah, well, despite everything, they would still want to return me. And it is still extraordinary that they should have had the kind of showing they did. I mean, the results they have are that ZANU-PF gained a very significant slice of the vote, which I mean, why? Why should people want to do that when their country has been destroyed and want to return the perpetrator of that destruction?
Now, the economy, of course, is in a shambles, and with 100,000% inflation. What kind of, in a post-Mugabe era, what kind of aid and investment will be needed, and will it be forthcoming? And is that, it must be a post-Mugabe era for it to be forthcoming.
Yes, I think most people would say they hope, I mean, that the international community is going to step into the breach and set up a mini Marshall Plan. You know, because it is a country that clearly has considerable potential. It was doing very, very well. It was a breadbasket. I mean, it was producing enough to feed its own population and to export. And the economy was humming, you know, and to think that someone can put such a massive spanner in the works, that the whole thing should become such an incredible shambles is really a shame. And it is in part that he probably was not being reined in by his peers, you know. One would have thought that some of the other African leaders would have, well, I mean, we don't know what they said behind closed doors, but you see, they needed to give some indication to people who were bearing the brunt of all of this, that they were concerned about them. And if they could have indicated that this was not the way to go, you know, he might not have continued. But I mean, the reports we get are that whenever they had, say, a meeting of SADC or the African Union, he used to be received as a great hero. And yeah, there is this ambivalence, you know. I mean, he was a liberation fighter. He did splendidly well. I mean, you know, they won the independence for their people. And when most people feared that there was going to be revenge and retribution, there wasn't. Ian Smith remained a member of parliament for donkey's years afterwards. And so, I mean, we need to salute him for that. And that tended to make it difficult for the other African leaders to clobber him. Because he was a liberation struggle hero. And especially Thabo Mbeki was in a very awkward position because he was younger, and Mugabe could treat him with some disdain. But one wishes that we could have been a little more forthright, I think. And that is one of the reasons why I've said we African leaders in every sphere, political, religious, and so on, in a way really have to hang our heads in shame. The tragedy of that country, in a way, is our own. I mean, we could have helped to avert it. Perhaps, I mean, if it may be, of course, that people did try to talk to him, and he was obdurate, but we have not had any such reports. In the absence of any indication, one has to assume that it almost seemed as if they were condoning, we were condoning what was happening.
Now, he hasn't had very nice words to say about you.
There are not too many who do.
What is it that he calls you?
Little evil bishop or something.
What I heard was that he would not take advice from the tiny purple priest.
Yes, I think you're making that up. No, yes, I'm sad because I'm fond of him. And my last meeting with him was when they were celebrating the 10th anniversary of their liberation. And I recall so clearly, we were sitting in the VIP lounge at Harare Airport. He had been seeing a number of people off, and Leah and I were some of the people who had been invited, and we were just reminiscing and sort of looking back at wonderful celebrations that they'd had. I never imagined that a day would come when I would have to excoriate him, as it were.
Before we move on from Zimbabwe, one other question I wanted to ask you, because we think about perhaps a post-Mugabe period. So much of the Zimbabwean talent is in exile. So many highly educated individuals from Zimbabwe are here in the United States or in the United Kingdom or around the world. Would many of them need to be attracted back in order to help jumpstart that economy one more time?
I don't think that you are going to have to dangle a carrot or whatever, some bait to win them back. Most of them are dead keen on returning. I mean, they are hurting. A lot of them are hurting, and one of them is, I don't know whether you know Walter Sisulu. Walter Sisulu, who was a leader of the ANC, and this particular person is his daughter-in-law. She wrote a very lovely book on her parents-in-law. She's in South Africa, but I mean her heart is back home, and she's amongst those who are working as hard as they can to try and get the situation normalized. And when she was in touch with me to find out, is there anything that we could do? And yeah, there isn't a great deal. I mean, one has tried being in touch with various of our leaders and seeing whether they might not be able to exert pressure. So I think, I mean, that it would not take a great deal to lure them back. I don't think that they would want to be lured back. They'd want to return and rebuild a beautiful country, I mean, with wonderful people.